Okay, guys.
Yeah.
So, let me do the date real quick here.
Is gain structural strength? No.
How's your foot?
It's pretty good. So actually, it feels better post-surgery than it did like the Thursday before I went in. So like I feel like it's already improved, but I'm so like there's not even a stitch in there. It's just a Band-Aid now. Well, like with steri strips, but they just put a needle in there and just like kind of like I was watching on the screen. I could like watch the whole thing because like I was awake. My phone
Why
was
would
just,
you watch it?
it was just it was just not my focus. No, but like they
Did
like
you feel it?
no like. I mean, literally,
Was
like,
it weird? Like,
yeah, that's
like,
so
knowing
weird.
that they're, like, poking
Because, like, you
your
can
foot,
feel, like, yeah, you know they're touching you, but, like, there's not, like...
Could you, like, not walk after the surgery?
Yeah, so, like, they had me put my boot right back on, but even, like, your foot being numb inside, like, it was a really weird feeling. So, like,
That's like when I got, like, teeth surgery or something.
yeah, but, like, imagine, like, that being your foot that you're standing, and then, like, in the afternoon on Friday, all of a sudden it wore off, and I was like, oh, it hurts, like, because it's, I mean, it's, like, there's, like, probably a bruise, like, that big on, like, the side of my heel, so... But it feels better. She thinks it like.
Wait, where was it?
It's like right. Well, where it hurts is like underneath my heel, but like it's like right my like Band-Aid's like right there. But so I have to wear the boot for another 2 weeks. It's like next week Friday I'm supposed to get it off, but then hopefully they said I could be completely off of
Good
it.
thing you don't have to rub any more home games.
Are there no more home games really?
Well, we have more home games, but not for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I thought like it seems like you guys have really short number of
Like
home
next
games.
week. Like
Yeah.
we have this week at Osaki, and then next week at Cedar Grove, and then I think the next one's at Osaki.
Yeah. That way Stone doesn't have to go chase after the balls anymore either. Alright. So guys, the word argument, as much as you probably like use in your everyday life, the word argument, think about getting in an argument with someone about like their favorite sports team or getting in an argument with your friend about something. Argument is not the same thing as it is in math class. So like a lot of things we talk about, like there's a different meaning in math. So basically, it's not dispute. An argument is a sequence of statements in which all but the final statements are called premises, and then the final statement's called the conclusion. So I'll write that out. So it's a sequence of statements kind of like, hey, she's talking a lot, she's saying a lot of things. So all the things that we're saying in the beginning, so like the ifs, the beginning things we're talking about, those are the premises. So basically everything but the last thing we're going to say is the premises. So beginning statements. And the conclusion is basically the end statement, and they're going to use the word therefore a lot, or they're going to use a symbol for therefore, is going to be the final statement. So like kind of our last thing we're going to say. So like therefore, you know, her foot felt better. Like therefore, there's not a home game. You know, like so like it's like the final thing that we're saying. So they're going to use the word therefore, but they're also going to use a little symbol for therefore rather than saying therefore. They like to shorten things up. They're going to use 3 little dots like a little triangle. So therefore, that means the same thing as therefore. So if you look ahead in our notes later on, you'll see a few of those little, like if you flip to the back side, there's a few little dots. And it's different dot than the little period, so they're like in a little triangle shape. rained, it was cold, it was dark, therefore we did not go outside during lunch today. We were kind of waiting for somebody to try to bust open the doors and go outside anyway, but hopefully the hail kept you inside. So we're like, hopefully, probably not. It's looking still a little wet and gloomy, so I'm thinking we're gonna stay in today. All right. We're talking about a couple of laws today, and actually these laws you guys actually learned in geometry, and since you had such an amazing geometry teacher, I'm sure you all remember them. But at the same time, we talked about them one day on one, lesson, so it's totally understandable that you probably forgot these different laws. So we're going to talk about the law of detachment. So I'm going to teach you guys a rule with the law of detachment. So we're going to use if-then statements with it, and then kind of use, make a conclusion here based off of that. So our if P then Q, so that's just in general.
Okay, we use detachment
It's not like the word like detachment that we use in like for everyday English. It's just the law of detachment. It's the way we argue that law. Because the antecedent is detached from the conditional. That's where it's detached, I guess, from. So, and the book actually uses this, like they use some Latin words for it, like modius ponens or something like that. I'm going to call it law of detachment. So if P then Q, we're going to say P therefore Q. So it's basically saying if P is true, then Q will be true as well. So I'm going to say if P is true, then Q is true. Alright, so if possible, make a valid conclusion from the following premises. So it says, if it is Tuesday, then we have tacos. What's a truth we know about today? What's true about today?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. So, Tuesday, therefore, what's going to happen then? According to this, we're going to get tacos. The lunchroom missed that memo. No tacos. I was picturing walking tacos. That would have been perfect for my lesson that we would have walking tacos. Now, you might say that's not true in my household, but according to this statement, if it's Tuesday, then we have tacos. So Tuesday would imply tacos. If today is Labor Day, then we don't have to go to school today. Can we make a conclusion? Today is not Labor Day, so we can't make that conclusion. We can't make the conclusion that we don't have to go to school today. So there's not a way to make a valid conclusion from this statement because today is not Labor Day. So this one doesn't work, so we can't really say anything else about it. Like that would be the determinant to make us not go to school, and that's not necessarily the case that we know of, that today is not Labor Day. All right. Law of transitivity, and you guys did this one you might remember from geometry from time to time. This came up in like a proof, is that basically it's like they're repeating themselves. So the way this one looks is if P, then R, throwing a new one in there, if R, then Q. So the same thing is being mentioned twice. therefore, from that, we can kind of switch over the fact that we can kind of go ahead and imply that if P what? How can I jump ahead to that? Q. So I can kind of get rid of those double R's. I don't need to say that, and so you're going to see that in this next statement. This one I always think of it as it sounds like I'm repeating myself. Like, why would I say that twice? And so if you look at it, just so you guys know, the order of the statements doesn't really matter. So it says if an instrument's in the percussion section, then it's placed in the back of the orchestra. If an instrument is played with a stick, then it's in the percussion section. A little bit out of order. We want to make a conclusion or write a statement that we can say about this that's a little shorter than what's currently being said. So what can I say here? What's another way to say this? Go ahead, Cash, you want to say this in fewer words.
If an instrument is played with a stick, then it's placed in the back of the orchestra.
Yeah, so the fact that it says if percussion section, then percussion section, it's kind of like it repeats itself. Why do we need to say that twice? It can kind of go from the first, if it's you play with a stick, then it's in the back of the orchestra. So we can kind of jump over that and make that conclusion. So we're cutting out the double, so that maybe even writing this as like a double statement, just kind of noticing that. So if it is played with a stick, like Cash said, in a briefer way that we don't have to say the same thing twice. If an instrument's played with a stick, then it is placed in the back of the orchestra. Now that other information is important information if you want to know about the percussion section, but it's just kind of wordy in terms of this statement. One more rule, and then we'll come back to the last few examples. I'm probably way short on notes here today. I'm gonna make myself a note that I can put more things together. I know you're heartbroken about that, but dang it. We'll probably do a funkahoot in between since we can't go outside today.
Funkahoot outside?
I mean, if you want to stand.
You could stand right out there.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. No, you can't because you probably run away. All right. So, law of indirect reasoning, and again, if you happen to look in your book and wonder whether they do use these Latin words for these, I will not use like the Latin words. Law of indirect reasoning is enough to like try and remember. This one is kind of like, it's almost indirect. You think about that this is kind of the inverse version of things. So, if P, then Q. So this one is saying basically if it's not Q, if Q doesn't work, then we can say not P. So this is indirect reasoning. So this statement would be an example of indirect reasoning. If a figure is a square, then it has 4 sides. A pentagon does not have 4 sides, so the Q doesn't work. What can I conclude then about that? What can I conclude then about this statement?
I think it's not a square.
A pentagon is not a square. A pentagon does not have 4 sides, so the second half didn't work because if it is a square, it has to have 4 sides. If the 4 sides are taken out of this, then we can conclude that that pentagon is not a square. That's a valid conclusion we can make. So since the second half didn't work, the first half cannot be true. And this, you could do this with almost any if-then statement. So like if you go back to we had to go to school today, so like do the opposite of this. Then today's not Labor Day. We could have made that conclusion back there, we just hadn't technically learned that rule yet. So since this didn't work, we could have actually made a conclusion that said today is not Labor Day. The fact that we're here today means that today is not Labor Day. Now, if you go home for dinner tonight and you don't have tacos, you can be like, what the heck, Mom, it must not be Tuesday. You know, so like, I mean, understanding that obviously not all these if-then statements are like facts. So, but that's kind of trying to show you those examples. We're gonna do a few examples here in a second. I wanna do a fun Kahoot with you guys just to give you a little break in here. The homework that's listed there is kind of in the middle just because I was running out of space. So I'm gonna